Hello, everyone. It's so good to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining YOLA National at Home. I have the super great pleasure of introducing our panelists today. So I'm going to pass the floor over to Joe Conyers. Before I do, please feel free to send in the chat your name and where you're tuning in from. I'm going to go ahead and introduce Joseph Conyers, Delaney Harris, Chi here, and I'm also going to ask our two Chineke Junior bassists, Ayana and Charles, to go ahead and pop on screen, and we're going to have a fantastic conversation with all of them. Joe, you want to take it away?
Awesome. Thank you, Angelica. Well, it's great to be here for Bass Forward. This is a fantastic platform to have a conversation where we can talk bass and talk about some things maybe a little outside of bass, but but otherwise related. I know we're all dealing with this pandemic in different ways, but in looking at the glass half full, it gives us an opportunity to actually have conversations like this. Because I'm sitting here, actually on my screen, I'm literally right between Chi Nwanaku and Delaney Harris. Like, who would have ever thunk it? It's pretty incredible. So I thought we would start with just introducing everyone who is speaking today, just so we can all get to know each other a little bit. And I can start with myself. My name is Joseph Conyers. I play double bass. Surprise! I play in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I run the nonprofit Project 440. I conduct a youth orchestra here in Philadelphia called All City. And I'm on faculty at the Juilliard School and Temple University here in Philadelphia. So that's me. Who wants to take it away? Delaney, it looks like you aren't on mute. I'll let you go next.
Okay. Wow, I have to go after that. Okay, my name is Delaney. I'm also a bass player. I started playing bass in YOLA, that's Youth Orchestra Los Angeles, the Elsa Sema Inspired program, run and operated by the LA Phil. I'm now a student at the Eastman School of Music. I studied double bass performance with Professor James Vandermark. And I also have a classical music podcast called Classically Black Podcast that focuses on Black culture and history within classical music and kind of where those two worlds collide.
It is a great podcast. I've been listening to it since the very beginning. Yo, folks, it's a great listen. It's a great listen. Chi Chi.
Oh, hi, I'm Chichi Nwanoku. I'm a double bass player as well. You can see my flight case sitting way over there in the back of the music room. I've been with various orchestras. I mean, I was with the Orchestra of the Age of Enlightenment for 30 years as principal double bass, and now for nearly 5 years ago, I created Europe's first majority Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse orchestra. Majority Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse orchestra. I get into trouble when people say the Black Orchestra. Are you being racist? Come on. And so and our mission is our slogan is championing change and celebrating diversity in classical music. And the Chineke organization is not only for the benefit of Black, Asian, and ethnically diverse musicians. The industry will benefit from more inclusion. And I've put my two of my juniors on the spot here because they've got to probably be the quietest people in the orchestra, which is not normal for bass players. And I've got to work on them a little bit more. And they are fabulous young double bass players, teenagers, and they play in the Chineke Junior Orchestra, and they've both won a position in the National Youth Orchestra
Oh,
this year.
congratulations.
And I've known Charles since he was 7, and Ayana since she was 12 or something like that, 11 or 12. I think Ayana's now 15 and Charles is 16. Anyway, I would like Ayana and Charles just to say just a couple of words. Don't be shy. Ayana, whichever one wants to go first. Be brave. Ladies first. Come on, Ayana.
Hi, yeah, I'm Ayana Rennie. Yeah, I play double bass. I study at Chisholm School of Music now, but I was previously at like the Menuhin School. And yeah, it's been a great journey, definitely being in Chineke Juniors, because it's definitely just one of the best experiences, like working with Chi Chi because she's just like an amazing, like energetic person. I'm just so thankful.
Oh, thank you.
I'm Charles. I'm 16. Obviously, I play the double bass. I started when I was 7, literally around 4 months before I met Chi Chi for the first time. I've been playing alongside the Chineke Juniors since their launch quite a few years ago now, and yeah, just well, the same thing as what Ayana said. Which was quite hard to follow up from. Yeah, it's just been amazing working alongside them and with them, and with Chi Chi as well.
Well, this is super, super awesome. And it's my first time meeting Ayana and Charles. So nice to meet y'all. And this is a great opportunity because we're bassists from all around the world, which is super cool. And again, the internet and technology has allowed us to do that. So I thought I would start off with something pretty simple. And that is, and I don't want to answer it first because I feel like I'm setting the, I don't want to do that. I'll probably end with it. But what is the best thing about playing the double bass? What is the best thing about being a bass player? And we can go in the same order if you want to start with Delaney. Delaney, what's the best thing about playing the double bass?
Um, I think I've always said that like every instrument has like a sound that no other instrument can imitate. Like, but for me, the what sets the bass apart is the fact that you don't just hear bass, you feel it. Um, my favorite thing I think about playing the bass is that we have the best seat in the house. Like being in the bass section, I've always said I would pay to have a ticket to just sit right there. Like I would go to way more orchestra concerts if they sold tickets that sat in the middle. It's great. So I think that's probably my favorite part.
Awesome. Chi Chi?
That's a great answer. I would love to have had that one up my sleeve. I don't know that I can, it's like when people say, what's your favorite piece of music? I find it really hard to, my favorite piece of music is whatever I'm playing at this very moment. Whenever I'm immersed in a piece, I can't think of any other piece that I might be playing. When I first had the double bass put into my hands at the age of 17 and a half, it was love at first sight. And it was, and I think, well, I used to play the piano beforehand, and I always used to get really excited when, say, playing a Beethoven piano sonata, and suddenly you had to do a bit of like an extreme sport, a bit something sexy when your right hand goes over the left hand and starts playing something amazing in the bass line. It was sort of doing this kind of thing. And I thought, I got very excited by those low things. And I realized I was born a bass player. And I just love being there as that kind of trampoline and rhythm and drive section underneath the entire orchestra. And what's really cool, when I first played in my first orchestra, it was a week after my first double bass lesson, so I knew the four open strings, and because I played the piano for years before that, suddenly I was in this room with all these other instruments, and suddenly there was a social life with my instrument, and I'm sitting there just waiting for G. But to be part of this symphonic sound at the bottom of it, it just doesn't get much better than that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Ayana?
For me, it's probably just like the rich tones you can produce, and like people think of it as like the bass usually as quite just a basic instrument, but it's not. You can literally produce anything, like all the colors you want, and it's just amazing to like know that you can produce that. Yeah.
Cool, Charles.
Yeah, pretty much the same as what everyone else has said, and the fact that it's so versatile, and not a lot of people see that in like the orchestra. It's always, well, in my opinion, it's always overlooked, and then like when you get a chance to show it can actually do, that's like a nice feeling as well, which comes with playing the bass.
That's awesome, Charles. I like that you said versatility because actually that goes to my thing about one of my favorite things about playing the bass is kind of being, because people don't realize how versatile we are, it's kind of like being the underdog a little bit. So being able to like surprise folks, I mean, that's actually been one of the most exciting things about playing is, so my mom, amateur singer, but loved singing, she sang in the Savannah Symphony Choir. So what's it called, Beethoven 9 and Carmina Burana, where she would sing that with Mozart Requiem, whatever. She would sing that with the choir. But I saw her grew up with a lot of singing, and that singing quality was always something that really attracted me to string playing, just string playing in general. So I would actually just really try to imitate the voice right away. And I love the fact, like being that underdog, you can surprise folks to say, no, this instrument can sing. Like we have a voice. We aren't just sitting in the back going, bah, 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 bah. But we actually have a voice that can sing and have a deserves a place to be heard. And I think the other thing is I always say we're the, and I think everyone would agree here because we're family, but we're the most important instrument in the orchestra. Without the bass, literally nothing else matters. We provide. It's like having, it's like it was like going to a movie theater with like no THX. Like I mean, without that sonority and without that bottom, everything else doesn't make sense. And I'm just saying, Bach wouldn't exist without the bass line that we get to play. So I'm just throwing that out there, So we've had that was great hearing from everyone. And because we're bass player, we are like great at many other things because that's what makes us unique. Because I think bass players are just that way. And we all have these projects, and we already heard a little bit about Chineke from Chi Chi. We will come back, and Chi Chi, I would love to hear more, and then we can talk more specifically about Ayana and Charles. But I will go to Delaney, and then talk to us more about Classically Black. Like talk about that and any other projects that you might have going on. I don't know, whatever. But talk like how did that come to be? Y'all are super engaging. It's Delaney and fabulous violist Katie Brown. And their podcast comes out on Mondays. So today is a new podcast day. So tell us more about Classically Black and how it came to be.
Yeah, so well, how it came to be was that Katie and we both went to Eastman. I was a freshman when she was doing her first year of her double master's in viola performance and music ed. And that was in 2016. But Katie and I actually didn't meet until 2018 at Sphinx in Detroit, which was like ridiculous
Tell us
to
about
us.
Sphinx. For those who don't know what Sphinx is, tell us about Sphinx just quickly.
All right. We were at the Sphinx Connect conference, which is like a convening of musicians, administrators, educators in Detroit by the Sphinx organization, which does a competition for Black and Latinx string players. So we met there, and we were friends like pretty instantly, and we were like, wow, we went to school for almost 2 years and did not know each other because there was no like Black Students Union, there was no connection or community of Black people at our school or in a lot of places at classical music at large, besides these like convenings that we're able to have like Sphinx, like the Gateways Music Festival, which is a music festival for Black musicians that actually takes place at the school that we went to. But so we decided we wanted to create a community of Black musicians that could kind of have a place to come together, to share ideas, that sort of thing on a digital level, so that we didn't necessarily have to fly everyone out, to a place because we were both in college, could not afford that. So yeah, that's how Classically Black came to be. We actually started it, I think we had known each other for about 7 months or something like that. But yeah, basically, we created it to make the contributions of Black people in the world of classical music visible. We also wanted to make classical music a little bit more accessible to people who are not necessarily familiar with it. I've always said that like classical music has never really been marketed towards Black people as like, you have a lineage here, you have a history here, and this is something that you can do and that pertains to you. Because where I'm from, people don't even know where that Eastman exists, that's a school that you can go to, that you can play the bass for a living. Like, so that's kind of like the main premise of Classically Black, along with just being very like candid and colloquial about classical music. I think a lot of the times it's seen as like high art, and that's a part of the reason why it seems inaccessible and unattainable to other people.
y'all are a breath of fresh air. I'm not kidding. When you talk about like just hearing classical music described in that way, the way y'all talk about it, it's normal. It's not like this thing
Normal.
that's up in the sky that we hope to one day attain. It literally is a conversation just between people, and I love it. I love that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because we don't come from like families of musicians. So like if we have to explain something, and it's not dumbing it down, it's just explaining it and like without, using technical terms and like being a little bit too, pulling
Yeah.
out that Eastman education. Like you don't have to do that all the time. So um just doing that and making, and even for the Black people within classical music, just normalizing like starting your instrument late, or like
Right.
feelings of like what is it like to feel like I may need to take a break from my instrument, and how do you come back from that? Like just we've had a lot of people say that like we appreciate how honest you guys are about your relationships with your instrument and that sort of thing. So that kind of all encompasses what classical Black is.
And it's great and it's real and it's genuine. And that's why I love listening to you both every week. It's the one that highlights my week every week. Thank you for that. Chi Chi, tell us more about Chineke. I mean, you talked about a junior orchestra, and so it means there must be like a senior orchestra. like,
Yeah, I just about qualify for the professional orchestra myself, and it's incredible because Joe, because I literally you were the first black double bass player I ever played with in my life.
no,
Yeah,
no.
Joe and I met at Sphinx, what,
Yeah,
12 years ago? You were
yeah,
the Grand Rapids Orchestra, I think. And I thought, gosh, I don't think I've ever heard anyone play it as loudly as this. I was just like, we were like lifting up the stage between us, you know. It was so exciting. And I will never forget walking into the first rehearsal. I had never experienced that
yeah.
in my life. And to have another black double bass player sitting next to me or me sitting next to them, it was just mind blowing for me. And I just thought, we are in the dark ages in England. We really are. And I didn't know any other black classical musicians. And I had been a professional for 35 years. Yeah, I'm older than 35. Before I know I don't look it. It's all right. Sorry.
Not in the least.
Before I had played with another musician of color, and the thing is, that was what I was served up. That was my status quo. I didn't argue with it. That was the norm. That was the status quo, and no one questioned it back in those days. And I had come from being a 100-meter sprinter, which was what my career was meant to be, guys. And it was just a fluky accident in a football match, a women's football match, where I was taken out, and ended up, and luckily I got this hobby going on in the background, and so I didn't think about it. I was being propelled from where the only place I saw other black people, apart from my siblings and my dad, was at home. You know, my mum was white, my dad was black, my siblings were the same colour as me, or a bit darker, some of them, and or at the start of the 100 meters. That's the only place I met black people. But we weren't really trying to be friends with each other. We were trying to eliminate each other, you know, because
Right.
we were racing against each other. And so that was the only time I ever saw black people, apart from my family. And then, you know, I happily went through my career. And when I look back now, I realize that I was actually positioning myself for doing what I'm doing now, and to be exposed to at the Sphinx with other musicians of color that were just blowing me away left, right, and center. I just didn't know that existed. That was a huge inspiration for me. And then but it took the culture minister of a Conservative Party government, when David Cameron was was the prime minister, which is the equivalent of your president, whose name shall not be mentioned on this. But his culture minister was Ed Vaizey, who started. You know, I met him because he used to come along to some board meetings that I was on the Association of British Orchestras board, which is like the League of America's board, and he started to call me into Westminster to discuss why did they only ever see me regularly on the international concert platform. And I kept thinking, what do you mean? I'm on the stage with my orchestra. And then he had to rub it in my face. No, I mean the only person of colour in the orchestra. That's what he meant. And so first of all, I started by saying, well, I'm there because I'm a musician. I've never defined myself by the colour of my skin. That's what you see. So now that I know what you're talking about, let's unpack this. And so of course I knew I was the only one all the time, but no one ever visited the subject. We didn't talk about it. I did not have a black network like you all have in America. You know, you all know other people of colour, and you might even play with them on a regular basis, but I didn't have any of that. And then it was when I saw the Kinshasa Orchestra performing at the South Bank Centre. I was going along with my National Youth Orchestra hat on because the Kinshasa Orchestra from the Congo, I thought, what? An orchestra in Africa exists? I never knew such a thing existed. So I was going to hear this concert and bumped into the culture minister on the way to the Royal Festival Hall, and he invited me to go join him to go to the pre-concert reception where I hadn't been invited to the reception, but and you know, the head of the concert hall, she sort of looked shocked when we walked in, and it was because a BBC documentary was being made about the Kinshasa Orchestra coming to England, and being interviewed as I came into the room was Tasmin Little, a very good friend of mine, and Gillian Moore was freaking out, saying not only should you have been invited to the reception, Chichi, but you should be standing in front of that camera doing an interview. And I said, well, you know, let's talk about this later. And the embarrassment was that they were making a documentary about an African orchestra, but that I was the only African in the room at the reception, and I hadn't even been invited. And so I kind of popped the bubble. And then during the concert, I was watching people's faces in the audience as much as I was watching the orchestra on the stage. And I just thought, as I walked back to the train station afterwards, this is the 21st century. It should not be a novelty that there's more than one black face on the stage playing Beethoven. Why is it a novelty? And that's when the penny properly dropped. And the next morning, I was on the phone to every musical establishment in the country saying this is what I was going to do. And everyone said, well, you won't be able to do this because there aren't any other musicians. I thought, well, I know one kid who plays the double bass that I met getting his Mayor's Music Fund award when he was 7. So that's one person. So I knew, because I was thinking, I'm starting a junior orchestra at the same time because they are the pipeline.
Yep.
And I literally had to go on the search and proved everyone wrong because everybody said it wouldn't happen because there weren't any players. Less than a year later, 62 professionals walked onto the stage. A couple of hours after, 45 juniors performed a couple of hours before us.
Yeah,
And
amazing.
that's the start of Chineke.
Amazing. You know, Aaron Dworkin tells a very similar story. When he started Sphinx in 1998, people were telling him you won't find enough musicians to make up semi-finalist pool. And I happened to be one of those musicians from that first year at the initial Sphinx.
That's fantastic.
And it
Yes.
was an incredible experience. I had the same experience that you had when you said you were playing here in the States with me, but like being in that at Sphinx for that first year, it was incredible just to see just to see that there are other young musicians my age, which I think this is a great segue to Chineke Jr., but to see other young people of color my age who were as enthusiastic about playing classical music as I was. And that to me is so crucial. So keep going. I just want to
Well, it was just an amazing thing for me. I mean, I was just buzzing from that experience, and I carried it with me. But I didn't know that I had a voice, you know. And then when that penny dropped, at that light bulb moment when I was watching the Kinshasa Orchestra, you know, and I realized, gosh, you know, I've done all these things. I've held a principal job for 35 years. I've had my own BBC Radio 3 program for 4 years. I've done presenting on the BBC Proms on TV. I've judged TV competitions. Maybe I could just say what I would like to do, and the whole place exploded. And they you know, they all said, yes, we want to get behind you. And so I thought, okay, so now I have to find some musicians. And and when people said to me that you wouldn't find them, I just decided I wasn't going to believe them and not to believe that popular narrative that no one existed. And I literally just started to search. And the more I searched, the more I found. And this is what I tell people today when they say, well, how can we get, one or two people, of ethnicity to play with our orchestra? Do you, they don't, or a composer of, people, if they only took the trouble to even just Google a few things, it's because we, black people, have never taken anything for granted. We've had to create our lives, our worlds, our futures, our industry, and and yet just about all of my white colleagues can take things for granted and have done and since the Black Lives Matter resurgence, since the awful brutal murder of George Floyd, I've heard from so many of my white friends who have said, Chichi, I've known you all my life. We've been friends since we were 6 years old, and I have just woken up to how my whiteness has benefited me throughout my life. And yet I've watched you achieve all you've achieved despite your blackness, because I've seen you hit all those hurdles, and you had that one career that crashed and burned, and you had to reinvent yourself, and you had to catch up with all those people starting the bass so late, and and trying to find a way. And that's how I know we are resourceful people. We are resilient. And one of the things that I have said to some of my students and some of my some of my Chineke juniors who have come to me saying, Chichi, I don't know if I've got the courage. I don't know how, who come with some pretty frightening stories, actually, to be frank. And I just say to them, this is one of the things that makes us so strong, that we've had 400 years of being suppressed, and you know what? If you just think about athletes, about football players, about boxers who do all these, what do they do to make them so strong? They do all this resistance training. We have been in resistance training for nearly 500 years, guys, and we're still here. That tells me that we are a strong people, and we're just getting stronger. And and if we see a chink in the door, we will put our foot in that chink and push that door a bit further open. And I'm in the process of pulling all my people through that door now. I realize I saw that chink in the door, and I just hope that it will carry on. The day you guys carry my coffin, you will be carrying the mantle of Chineke forward, because the door's been opened, and I never had a black colleague right until I was in my 40s, so it's quite a long time.
Yeah,
Joe, Joe was my first stand partner.
that's incredible. So
And
tell
if you
us.
haven't heard him play, you need to hear this guy play.
No, no. Well, we've talked about this before, but again, you were so inspirational when I saw you for the first time performing. This is before we had met in this way, but yeah, at Tanglewood back in 2000 or 2001, when y'all did a Brandenburg tour and you came to Tanglewood, played in Ozawa Hall, and you just blew me away. It was just so, and it was so for me, I was like, I'm playing next to Chi Chi. That speaks to that. So tell us more. I mean, I don't know if we can hear directly from Ayana, Charles, about their experiences in Chineke Junior, and yeah, and what that is like. Ayana, Charles, not at the same time. We don't want to overwhelm the internet.
Anna, tell us about your experience up until now with the juniors, how it started.
Yeah, being with Chineke Juniors, I've definitely been so grateful for the opportunity that Chi Chi gave me. It definitely has like transformed my life for the better. And just recently, I faced like one of my like many biggest challenges as a musician, like regarding NYO. And just the encouragement that I got from Gigi was just amazing, because I was on the verge of like thinking that I'd have to just give up like playing the bass. and I was definitely scared at that point. But just the encouragement and the words of wisdom that she gave definitely just made me just have more sight and clarification that I would be able to just just like find that I had potential and that she was giving me the opportunity still. And I definitely faced a lot of down points with being in Chineke Juniors. And Chi Chi is like harsh in a good way. But that definitely like helped me. Sorry, that's definitely that's definitely helped me blossom into like the person I am today.
That's really no, that's awesome to hear. And actually, there are a few levels and layers here because between you, Delaney, and Chi Chi, we have three woman bass players. So talk about that a little bit. I mean, Delaney, I don't know if you want to chime in about what it's like being a woman playing this instrument that's been for centuries regarded as a man's instrument, like solely, like almost without question.
Well, I was told in my very first year, my first term at the Royal Academy, my parents had come down to watch my first concert at the Royal Academy of Music with the orchestra. And as I was packing my bass up afterwards, I was feeling so elated after this concert in the Duke's Hall. It's a very grand hall at the Royal Academy of Music. And my parents had driven all the way down to London to see this concert. And afterwards, I packed up my bass and then ran to find my parents. And my mother was looking really concerned. And I said, "Are you okay, Mum?" And she said to me that one of my bass tutors had found my parents. They obviously knew which were my parents, the only black man in the entire audience, you know, and found my parents and said to them, I would not have a career in music because I was playing a man's instrument. And my mother was sort of looking really scared. And my father, if you know what SMT stands for, you know, suck my teeth, you know, when you do that, my dad did one of those, you know, and rolled his eyes and he said, yeah, just watch, you know. And and then, you know, my mum took more convincing that I was actually going to just go for it. And I just said, well, you know, I managed to get into the Royal Academy of Music after 2.5 years. So you know, I'm on a trajectory.
Yeah, yeah. Delaney, you're like a good generation behind me. So I don't know what it was like. You were in the YOLA program, Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles.
Mhm.
And how many other women bass players were there? How did you pick the bass? Why did you end up playing the bass and not something else?
Um, well, I think there were like, I think I can remember two when I was in Yola. But a lot of bass players fell off because it can be complicated to just even handle. But I actually did not pick the bass. It was chosen for me, but it was it was it worked out. It was actually such a coincidence. Before there's like a meeting that you go into to figure out what instrument you're gonna play, and my mom was like, "What about the bass?" And I was just kind of like, okay, like
Suggested it.
she suggested it, and I was kind of like, I kind of brushed it off, and then we went in the meeting, and they were like, "Oh, we think you should play the bass," and then I was just like, "Well, I mean, I guess so." Like, yeah, I don't know. It worked. I played the piano before I played the bass, so
Got it. And
um,
did you feel any sort of, I mean, you, again, maybe it's a different time, and I know YOLA is very welcoming and open, so you may not even realize that there aren't a lot of women who play the bass. Maybe for you, it's just, I want to play the bass.
oh no, I definitely have I've definitely had those experiences, not necessarily in Yola, but I went to an arts high school. I've been in music festivals, conservatory, that sort of thing. And like I've been in situations where I've kind of had to remember who I am, and not let the fact that I'm in a new space intimidate me, because I've had a stand part to say that orchestra period was no place for a woman, like
Wow.
and yeah,
Your age?
what is going on, like, yeah,
Wow.
and just people, or I've had experiences with the whole locker room talk thing, like acting like I'm not in the room and talking about women in a way that's like, we're in orchestra, maybe eyes front, but like, but I don't know. I definitely feel like people are getting better about that, but it's definitely been a journey in terms of having to remember, okay, let me just take a step back from this, and y'all are tripping. You know what I mean? Like, just
Yeah.
realize that also I have a voice in that sort of thing. Like, even if you are the only woman in the section, I know it can definitely be a little like, you know, you feel kind of out of place. And then also I'm a Black woman, and being in a section full of white men, like the whole dynamic is just weird. Like, it's just off sometimes, you know. But I think one thing that I say a lot about classical music is that it doesn't really lend itself to being secure in who you are, just because it's a art form in which you have to constantly evolve, and you're
Yeah.
constantly taking criticism and trying to get better, and changing, and you know, so it doesn't really lend itself to being like, okay, this is who I am and I am rooted in this, because you're always trying to change. um but I think that's been one of the most important aspects of like finding a balance between when you're going to take criticism, when you're going to take things like personally, you know, how, you know, that sort of thing has helped me, not even just in evolving as a player, but in the social aspect as well,
Yeah.
which, you know, relates to that.
No, I love that. I mean, I can. I mean, even what Chi Chi said, and the building up of resilience, and then being a classical musician on top of that. And I think that's. I mean, that yeah, that all makes sense, and it's fantastic that Ayana has role models like you and Chi Chi helping to pave the way. Yeah, Chi Chi.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, Ayana was very modest in her. She's, you know, she's literally come from a massive challenge, and she's put it very mildly there. And that, you know, it's you don't see many kids of colour in the National Youth Orchestra. You can count them on one hand, okay? And that orchestra is about 165 players. I was on their board for 8 years, so I've watched that orchestra, and I know, you know, and most 99% of that orchestra do come from privilege, seriously privileged, and you know, and in order to even apply to go to the National Youth Orchestra, you have to. I don't know if you're aware of ABRSM. It's a governing board that judges your different levels of playing. You take these exams: grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and grade 8 is the top grade. And you need grade 8 distinction, because you get pass, merit, distinction. You have to get grade 8 distinction before you can even apply to go to music college, you know, like the Royal Academy of Music to college. You need grade 8 distinction to even apply to go to the National Youth Orchestra, okay?
Wow.
So that suggests kids who've had a lot of privilege teaching, and not many people get to that stage. These two kids here have got to that standard,
Yeah.
you know, and they don't go to those posh schools. And then Ayana managed to get into, was given a place at the Menuhin School, but you know, she wanted to try her hand to get into the National Youth Orchestra. And it's not just a straight audition. You have to audition, and then you do there's about 3 rounds. You know, you don't just play the bass, you have to do a few other tricks as well, you know. And she wanted to get herself ready, but she was being held back from doing that. Her teacher didn't want her to do it, but she was determined. And so this is a case. I saw this as a case of trying to hold Black excellence back unnecessarily. And so Ayana decided to put herself in for it herself without.
Yeah, Ayana, that's great.
I also stepped in afterwards, because Ayana, she not only did she put herself in to apply, she knew she wanted to try to get into the National Youth Orchestra, and she knew she needed to get her grade 8, so she entered herself for her
Yeah.
grade 8. Normally your teacher enters you for your grade 8. So she thought, well, the teacher refused to enter her for grade 8, so okay, I'll enter myself. And
Love it.
and then not only that, she got a distinction. And so she thought, right, I've got my distinction. I will apply for the National Youth Orchestra. The main coach there used to be Duncan. It's now Graham. You know Graham. And so she wins a place there. And then when she's discovered, you know, all hell breaks loose.
Yeah.
And that's why she's now at Chetham's School of Music in Manchester rather than the Menuhin School.
Oh, very good. Very good.
she did it off her own back, and of course it. I
Amazing.
probably shouldn't have told all of that, but what you have done, Ayana, coming, with your background and everything that you have come from, you have displayed the most incredible triumph over adversity at such a young age that you deep down have come from, that you have got that grit and that resistance. And if you can do that at the age of 14, 15, you know goodness me, what has the world got to look forward to? Sam, watch out, Charles.
Well, yeah, no, that's great. So, Charles, now you have to
Down
speak
your
after
neck.
all that. Because I want to talk about your experiences in being in Chineke and being a young bassist, being in the Chineke Junior Orchestra, now going off to the National Orchestra, what that means to you and what your experiences have been.
Yeah, that's quite hard to follow. I don't really have the same sort of story like Ayana does, but yeah, so I've been with Chineke since its very beginning. I remember the very first concert, or what I can remember as the very first concert, was held in the Claw Ballroom at the South Bank Centre. So even that, as one of the many places that we've performed, was completely new to me because I've never done like a live session with the audience because we did passenger seats where children in the audience could sit amongst the orchestra and see what it's like to be alongside the musicians. So that was like from the very first event, Chineke was something that was really new to me, and I really enjoyed those as well, and we still do those. With NYO, I auditioned, so I'm in my second year now. At the end of my second year, so I auditioned nearly no 2 years. It would be 2 years ago now, and like Ayana, I had to do my grade 8, which I did when I was 12 or 13,
Yeah.
and the my first actual NYO event I ever did was
Charles, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is so terrible. But for anyone who's listening, this could be very confusing because everyone's referring to NYO. And I'm pretty sure they
oh
picked
yeah,
up on this,
sorry.
but y'all are in England, the
Yeah.
United Kingdom. There's a big NYO program here in the States. And people are like, eighth grade test? What are they talking about? So this is a different program that is in the United Kingdom, not in the United States. Sorry, I just want to make that distinction for anyone who's getting confused.
Yeah, sorry. So the first event I did with NYO and the well the National Youth Orchestra, and the reason that I auditioned as well a lot earlier than I expected to was because there was a sort of collaboration between a few Chineke junior members and NYO where we performed Bernstein's Mass at the
Oh,
South Bank Centre.
wow.
And I was fortunate enough to be the Chineke bassist who went along and played alongside the National Youth Orchestra. And from their members supporting me alongside the Chineke members, I decided to audition that same at the end of that coming year, which was not my original plan, but through all the support that I'd got, I thought I was sort of ready to actually audition.
That's very cool. And now you're there. And now you remember. That's really amazing. And I honestly, all these stories mean to because we're getting close to the hour, and I know there are a few questions. But all these stories kind of are at the heart of why I even started my own work at Project 440. It really is about creating opportunity. When you have all these students who are just need the opportunity, they need the chance. I tell the story. We were in southern Georgia, and we were in a car. My whole family, my mom made this comment. We saw some kids playing on the porch, and they were very. You could tell they did not have a lot of privilege or opportunity at all. And my mom said among one of those kids could be a genius, an Einstein, a Mozart, and no one will ever know. And that literally that has stuck with me my entire life. And that has been the impetus to why I started my own organization, Project 440, which is a unique organization in that we are a music organization that doesn't teach music. We use music as a tool to teach entrepreneurship, leadership, and service in high school students, as well as college and career. And because most of the time, particularly in communities that are underserved and don't have a lot of resources, it's just about providing the resources. It's not because these young people can't perform or don't. It's not even like It's not because these young people don't want to perform or don't or choose not to. It's just because they don't have the resources. And then Project for 40, that's what we try to do in our organizations, to provide these steps, because there are many musicians. Some will go into classical, some will go into different, and some will become doctors or I don't know, whatever, a lawyer, whatever. They could do other types of work, but music is that pathway to help them see that success. Because music, we believe very strongly, is a real connector. It connects us to others in society. It connects us with different parts of society. And it opens up these doors as people on the planet. And then we always like to add the whole social entrepreneurship concept. So once you've made it and once you've done what you wanted to do, or even while you're on your way there, how can you help someone along the way? How can you help someone else along the way so you can provide opportunity for others? To me, y'all, that's what the world is supposed to be about. The world is supposed to be about us helping each other, because we're all in this together. We're in this pandemic together. We are. Like, it's not like, oh, England has they I mean, it sucks for England. Like, no, right now it sucks for us in the States. So, a whole lot. So, I mean, we're all in these things together. So, how can we lift each other up and help each other up in the work that we do? And music is such an incredible tool to be able to do that. So, I know we're getting close to the end, but one of the questions that came up, and this kind of starts that, is I'm going to read it now. It's from Alan. Alan asks, how do you, as players, consider oh, no, that's not that. I will get to that one, but it was another one. Where was it? It must have been in the chat. I think it was like, what do you want the future of music to be? And I cannot find it. We'll get to the who. Hopefully, we'll get to the who. But what do you think is the future of our industry? We'll start with you, Delaney, and we might have to make these short just so we can wrap these in.
What I hope to see in the future of classical music is, I think, more acceptance of other art forms and how they can relate to classical music. I feel like there's a lot of, well, this is us and that's everything else. And I think that there's a lot more crossover and there's so much that's relevant to other art forms from classical music and vice versa. And I think that it can only enrich what we do as classical musicians.
I think that's such an exciting opportunity for us. I always say music is music, and how they connect with each other and what that can turn into in the concert hall is so exciting. It's so exciting. It's like mind-blowingly exciting, because we've done so little up until this point to embrace that. And what it looks like. Anyway, Chi, you next.
I absolutely agree. I feel, music itself does not discriminate. And I've said that many, many times. And, I remember waking up with horror to discover that the music that I'd fallen in love with before I knew it was even called classical music, I was learning my things on the piano. It resided in this elite little box up over there where only certain sort of people went to those. And I just thought, no, what have I done? But by then it was too late. I was hooked into that actual, genre. And in recent years, we've worked with Carl Craig, we've worked with Stormzy, we've worked with a few other genres, and it's been absolutely fantastic. All music is for everyone. And I just wanted to just go back and just to say about what do I think for the future of our art form, because we're all stuck. We don't know what's going to happen. Everyone is just trying to survive. Orchestras are in danger of shutting down at the moment. But one of the things that I've said very recently to the Times newspaper is that if we want to remain relevant, and we cannot be excellent unless we are relevant to the community that we serve. And that means all denominations of religion, all ethnicities, all ages, because we cannot carry on residing in this little elite box that only ticks, that only sees a certain audience. And we've just got to get ourselves much more woke and up to date with everything. And just going back to I wanted to answer another question that you said earlier. I mean, I really want to know more about Project 440, but about the different professions that people do. Because that's why I believe that every single child at every single free school, state school, we call those state schools in England, every child should learn instruments because. Even, of course, they're not all going to be professional musicians, but if you've learnt an instrument, you'll be better at whatever else you're going to do.
That's correct.
And I have a Nigerian. My father was Nigerian, and in Nigeria, the traditional it was you only had four choices in life. The children had to be either a doctor, a lawyer, an engineer, or a disgrace to the family. So there was no other choice, And so to be a classical musician, I had to really convince them, So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Charles, Ayana, I mean, y'all are the youngest, so the future is in many ways in your hands. What do you see? Really briefly, because we're gonna have to cut this short soon. Anything, Ayana, Charles? Please give us something to look forward in the future. Give me something. I gotta have something to look forward to. What do you hope to see?
For me, it's definitely just more partnership because when we all share a passion and a love for music, there doesn't need to be a divide. So yeah, just to summarize, just partnership. Yeah.
Awesome. Charles, this is your last chance. Yeah, go. There you go.
If I was going to say anything, I'd probably say like the same because I know when I was a lot younger, especially the first time I did like a national orchestra, national children's orchestra, I felt like some of the people there were like not really not sociable is like not the word, but sort of like they didn't interact with like other people because of like reasons or because they thought they were better or whatever, and like there was a sort of barrier. So the same as what Ayana said, really.
Yeah.
Like if that could come down, or that would be pretty good.
We are bass players, and when we're as bass players, we are generally kind of cliquish. But it's something that can go throughout the industry, and it is a family like atmosphere that I hope can reverberate through the whole of the entire of our industry and the work that we do, so that we can have this beautiful, bright future all together. Delaney, Chi-Chi, Ayana, Charles, thank you all so much for joining us on this this webinar. What do we call this? It's not a webinar. It's a something. It's a talk. We're having just a base hang. Thank you for. Yeah, it's been really, really wonderful talking to you. It's always wonderful seeing both you and Delaney, Delaney and Chi-Chi. Always, always. And I look forward to following your careers, Ayana and Charles. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We didn't get to all the questions, but I think we all have social media ways we can be in touch. I don't know if I can even put it in the chat real fast, but I'm on Instagram. That's my main thing. My handle is Weatherclef, like Weatherclef. I'll put it in the chat. Maybe we'll put it in the chat, and then it looks like Angelica will sign us off.
Thank you,
Joe. Perfect. I just want to say another thank you. And if all of you want to go ahead and drop your information in the chat, that would be great. This way people can stay tuned and follow you all and ask any additional questions they might have. But beyond that, thank you all so much for such a wonderful conversation. And to the rest of you all listening in at home, we hope that you'll join us for the rest of the week, our very last week of YOLA National at home. And thanks again. We'll catch you all soon.
Thanks. Goodbye, everyone.